How's it going, Tiny Whoopers? Today I wanted to talk about the various VTX camera combinations for Tiny Whoops. There's a lot of different ones to choose from out there, and I'm sure a lot of them are great, but the ones that I'm going to discuss in today's video are the different ones I've used and the ones that I continue to use. These tiny little camera VTX combos come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. Most of them are going to be quite small, like this guy. The first cam that I ever flew with was the stock camera on the Inductrix FPV. Compared to the cameras, VTXs that I'm going to show today, that one is a complete piece of junk. The picture is horrible and blurry even, and you really can't see very much, especially compared to these other ones. Once I started making modifications to my Tiny Whoops, I then tried the FX805, and that I purchased from NewBeeDrone. And I still love that camera. In fact, I think it might be one of the best. The switch from bright to darkness is outstanding, and the picture quality is amazing. NewBeeDrone still sells the FX805. I think they call it the Stinger Pod, and it is a FX805 with a dipole antenna versus the circular polarized that normally came on it. I personally try to fly only dipole antennas because they're smaller, lighter, and they are much harder to damage. So I have this Tiny Whoop here. This is my 6mm build, and you can see it has a circular polarized antenna. I've had to resolder that antenna probably 15 times now since I've gotten it, and it's just super annoying. It doesn't really look like it's very aerodynamic. And obviously it's definitely heavier than the dipoles. So that is a dipole antenna, and this one is how they're coming now with the jacket removed. I think removing the jacket from the antenna actually makes it a bit more durable, since it can flex and bend during a crash versus just being super stiff and starting to break off the board itself. This is an example of a dipole antenna that still has the jacket on, and if you look really close there at the base, I have a bunch of hot glue, and that is to reinforce the antenna where it's soldered to the board. The other camera I tried right after I flew the FX805 was the FX900TW. This is the FX900, and the camera and the VTX have been separated, and this allows for these more streamlined builds where the antenna sticks out the back. There's also now an FX805 with OSD. The OSD is actually built into the camera versus being on the flight controller, so you don't have to have an OSD based FC. All you would need is the FX805, and it will show you your call sign, your battery voltage, and I think your on time. There's another camera, it's cheaper, it's about $20 I believe on Amazon, and it is by BetaFPV. It is the H02 camera VTX combo, and it is an OSD camera, but it's different than the FX805 OSD. The FX805 has internal OSD, meaning the OSD is controlled by the camera itself. The H02 camera by BetaFPV is actually controlled through a video in-out and uses the Betaflight OSD chip that is actually on the flight controller. What that means is, in order to use the OSD of the H02 combination, you would have to have a flight controller that has Betaflight OSD. I generally prefer the FX805 OSD camera just because the OSD is built into the camera itself. There's no extra wires or anything. You just hook up your positive and ground and you're good to go. Another camera that is very good quality, just like the FX805, is the VM2751. That camera seems to be almost exclusively sold by Micromotor Warehouse, but I do think I've seen it in other places. I've never personally tested that camera or flown it, but from the videos I've seen where Benedict flies that, the videos and everything look really great. Another thing is mounts. So a lot of these, especially the cheaper ones that you'll find on like Amazon or some of these other less prominent websites, may not come with a mount for it. And that can be a real issue if you're not very crafty or have the tools to create your own mount. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind when you're deciding on a camera VTX combo, is whether or not it comes with a mount. And another thing that I've experienced is that not all mounts are created equal. The Craze Pony FX 805, 806 variants come with a clear or colored vacuum mold canopy slash mount, and I personally do not like them. It's really hard to add in any kind of camera angle, and they essentially make the camera going straight forward. So you can imagine when you're in flight and you're pitched forward some, that you're actually kind of looking down instead of straight ahead, and I don't really like that. The FX 805 and the FX 900 TW, they both come with a free mount. It's a 3D printed mount. I believe it's printed by TinyWhoop, but I really like them, and they usually have either a 10 or 20 degree angle built into them. They're really easy to use, and the TinyWhoop mounts allow for these lower profile builds that have the nice canopies. So this brings me to my next point, and that is about the canopies themselves. I think the canopies are really important, especially if you're going to invest in a better VTX camera combination. The FX 900 TW and the FX 805 OSD that are both sold by TinyWhoop have the separated camera and VTX module so that they can be split up and put on the TinyWhoop in a way that allows for the canopies to be put on there. Now, if you've ever had these canopies or seen them, they don't seem like very much. They almost just seem like cosmetic only, but they actually aren't. These things can actually take quite a beating, and they are really, really good at protecting the electronics inside of your TinyWhoop. I'm sure you can see the blemishes on the top of my canopy here. And that is from crashing, sliding upside down, you name it. The same things happen with this build, but since this build has the antenna coming out of the top and no real canopy, did I just break it? The antenna can be very easily broken on those, and you're either going to need a lot of hot glue or be resoldering it a lot, and it gets really annoying. I personally think that the FX 900 TW or the FX 805 OSD that are sold by TinyWhoop are the two best. They have the separated VTX and camera combinations, which allow you to run the lower profile builds and use the canopies. So I also have a few of these different cameras on my TinyWhoops, so I'm going to quickly rip those around the studio, and then I will put up a grid of the feeds so that you can compare the different video qualities yourself and decide which one you like the best.